Hello and welcome to One Cell, One Light Radio with Dr. Hildegarde Staninger, commonly known as Dr. Hildy. I have a very special show for you audience today, which is Feast Your Eyes on Edible Flowers. We're going to go from the gardens that are connected throughout all our United States and possibly of the world. And I have a very special guest who is Aaron Steil. He is Education Coordinator and Visitor Services Coordinator at the Reiman Gardens, Iowa State University. And he will be on our first hour. In the second hour, we'll go to market to eat edible flowers. Aaron, I'm very honored that you're here and have taken the time from your busy schedule at the university. And I know especially with the summer, the gardens are very popping with tourists and people looking at all the beautiful flowers and the many new things that you have, even the butterfly garden there, sanctuary.
Yeah, well, it is busy here, but I'm happy to be talking with you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, wonderful. Can you give a little bit of background in reference to the Reiman Gardens and Iowa State University and what you do there, as compared to the rest of the United States?
Sure. Well, Reiman Gardens is a botanical garden, arboretum, public garden, kind of more broadly speaking, associated with Iowa State University. We kind of have two major functions, and one of those is to serve as a kind of a learning laboratory for the university, the Department of Horticulture, the Department of Landscape Architecture, and other departments on campus do use us to help teach their students their various skills that they need to learn as students at the university. But we're also a wonderful kind of tourist attraction and display garden with 30 different gardens that folks can come and see, and one of our most popular exhibits here, apart from the rose gardens and our lake, is our butterfly flight house, so we call it the butterfly wing, and inside of it we have hundreds of both native and tropical butterflies flying around. It's really kind of a fun and inspiring place to be.
Right, and with the butterfly garden, because butterflies have a short lifetime, how do you supply the butterflies in that area?
Yeah,
especially
they do. Yeah, they do. Well, and of course the butterfly itself, the average lifespan for the butterflies that we have is about 2 weeks. Of course, that's only one part of their life. Butterflies start out as caterpillars and can live how long as a caterpillar and then chrysalids and then become a butterfly. But for us, the way that we keep all those butterflies flying around in there is that about once a week, sometimes twice a week when it's really busy, we will have shipments come in from various parts of the world, sometimes Central America, sometimes Southeast Asia. We work with a broker to help us get stuff from places like Southern Africa and Australia, all sorts of places. Oddly enough, the broker's in Denver, which seems kind of an odd place to be, but we get a shipment in every week.
One time, so it can be anywhere.
That's true. So we get these shipments in once a week, and they come to us as chrysalids, or if you're a moth, it would be equivalent to a cocoon, and they emerge out of those chrysalids in what we call our butterfly lab. And we take them over to the butterfly wing where they fly around and visitors can enjoy kind of interacting very closely with some of these butterflies, which is, of course, a lot of fun.
Right, and I know you have like 800 species in there approximately, but you also have, which you've shared with us when we were interviewing for the promo, in reference to the blue morpho.
Yeah.
That apparently is a very rare butterfly with iridescent blue wings, but where is that native of in the United States?
It's actually native to Central America, parts of southern Mexico, down into Costa Rica. It's a rainforest species, I believe, and it is rare, especially for us here in Iowa. If you were down there, you probably would see it about as often as you would see a monarch or a swallowtail somewhere else in this country. But
Right.
for us it is, and it's just such a showy butterfly with iridescent blue wings. It's a real showstopper, and it's something that it's just one of, we have, because all of these butterflies are exotic, we do have to work with the USDA and have permits to display and raise some of these butterflies. And we have permits to display well over 1,000 different kinds of butterflies here, although we don't have that many at once. We usually have about 50 different kinds, and we kind of change it up throughout the year to always introduce something new. But the blue morpho is one that we will have most of the time, because it's something that folks really enjoy seeing when they come in, and something that's very unusual, especially in the middle of Iowa.
Right, because in our audience, Iowa gets snow, and that's why even with the Reiman gardens, when you're doing the horticulture studies or the landscape management to get your degree, some of the students, it might start out like with 15 in a class or a group, and then end with only 5 at the end because of the cold and also the curriculum, meaning what they need to do in their curriculum. So
Sure.
It's always evolving, as I called it when I used to teach years ago. It's just ever going. The Reiman Gardens, many of our audience, because they're located in different parts of the world, literally, let alone the United States and Canada, could you give a little history of how the gardens became the gardens? Because that's a little interesting story before we get heavy into the edible flowers.
Yeah. Well, Iowa State University has always had kind of a display garden that they used as a outdoor classroom and a place to evaluate and test plants and different kinds of flowers here at the university. And in the mid-'90s, we were able to kind of expand that and move it to a new location that was much more prominent in the community, and that's kind of the beginning of Reiman Gardens. It's called Reiman Gardens because of the main benefactor, which is Roy and Bobby Reiman. Roy was a magazine publisher, and he's since kind of retired, in quotes, I suppose. He still keeps very busy. But he was the person who gave us the initial funding and continues to support us today to help build the facility that we have here today, 14 acres with a conservatory and a butterfly flight house and rose gardens and water gardens and all sorts of just wonderful kind of features that inspire those who visit us to garden in their own homes.
Right, and in this show, which is on feasting your eyes on edible flowers, really, what is the use of edible flowers? When I was preparing for the show, meaning before getting introduced to you, Aaron, I didn't realize, but Iowa State University, through the Reiman Gardens, is among the leader in bringing out the knowledge of edible flowers, let alone private interest or private companies. And that was very nice, warm and cozy feeling for me, knowing that a state university was involved in bringing out this knowledge, because it's so important. We work with Iowa State University Extension. Iowa State University is a land-grant college, which means that part of their mission is to kind of distribute information to Iowans and people around the country about research and to share that knowledge with the general public, and we are one way in which that message is kind of set across. And most public gardens, whether it's the Reiman Gardens here in Iowa or it's Descanso Gardens or Lotus Land in California, these places a lot of times have a mission of educating people, not just showing them beautiful plants, but teaching them about gardening, about plants, and why they're important in our lives. And so the information that we make available on edible flowers on many different garden topics is an important part of what we do here. Right, and even if our audience would go to Iowa State University, Reiman Gardens, and plug in edible flowers, they'd find a beautiful brochure that is wonderful to print out. It gives basically the names of key edible flowers, from nasturtiums to daylilies to chives to chamomile, impatiens, and many others. But what is nice about that brochure, it also has a diagram for the anatomy of the flower, so that you know what to pick and what not to pick in eating it. And we have some beautiful recipes on the site, audience, that you can play around with, and some pictures and everything. And from the edible flowers and what you've seen, I know you recently went to a conference, Aaron, and had the experience of eating edible flowers. Can you share with the audience what your experience was? Because it's being treated like royalty, but from the kingdom of the plants.
Yeah, it really is.
Flower. It's very different than eating any other kind of food.
Did
you have that experience?
I did, actually. It really kind of makes the whole meal on a different level, and I'm sure you'll talk a lot about this in the second hour when you talk more about actually using the flowers in food. But it really does give you kind of a real special feeling, and the thing that's so amazing about it is some of this of the things that are on there are quite common in terms of flowers that we see every day, things like marigolds and impatiens and daylilies. I mean, these are flowers, and roses, absolutely. These are flowers that are in many people's gardens and things that you could easily come across, seed or plants in the garden center, or heck, even at a hardware store on the corner.
Right.
And so just to see something like that on your plate is something real special.
Right, and then if you do eat it, these soft cheeses, meaning like cream cheese or Hoggenfog, I sort of slaughter that name, and even soft goat cheeses or any of those, just stuffing a nasturtium flower with that soft cheese, I mean, it just makes it feel so special when it's in the mouth. And because, audience, because these plants, which we're talking about the flowers or their early blossoms before they go into, not seed, into the fruit or the bud, what they have so much high nutritional value, and also like to jumpstart the body. In it's like if you ate a nasturtium because of the peppery leaf, and you put it on the roof of your mouth, your sinuses open up. You know, it's related to watercress. It's a little bit like a horseradish, but mild. So there's many different things, and you can put different jellies on it, or mango jellies, fig jelly, cherry jellies, and bring out the blends of those. I mean, I think there would be a whole, I'm in the far infrared business, and I tell you, it would be so nice having edible flowers in a giant far infrared room, to experience. It's really wonderful, and it's not just limited to these roses that you can put and sprinkle the petals on top of, like your other vegetables, maybe cucumbers, tomatoes, or lettuce, or even ground kale, and put them on to bring the flavors. Like you mentioned, marigolds. Marigolds have been used traditionally as an anti-pest or pesticide, material, especially with aphids or anything. You always planted your marigolds with your tomatoes so you didn't have the aphids, etc. Yeah. While nasturtiums, aphids love nasturtiums. So you have to sort of put those marigolds with them, too. The thing is that those petals are so aromatic when you even touch them that in ancient times and to current times, they used to use it as a tonic for sunburn and getting rid of mosquitoes, and also mumps if you had swollen glands. So I feel it's so important that you look around where you're living at. These are plants that can easily be grown in an apartment or a home. Just have them have sunlight. If you don't have a light, light access, you could buy one of the daylights, for $12 or that in your local what do you call it, drugstore or 5 and 10 store, and start producing, because you don't need a lot of these plants. You just need a select few, and it makes a meal pretty. It's just the only place I have seen, meaning when I went to travels, when I had one time a business meeting with the consulate with Czech Republic, and the thing is, we went to Marienbad, and they did beautiful venison plate, but they used flowers on it, and it was so pretty. So I know as a decoration, and it gives that color and that vitality to the prepared meal. And what I like about these edible flowers too is that, like, if you use the soft cheese or the peanut, you could even use peanut butters or any of these types of different butters. And what do you call it, jellies, or I prefer preserves because it's got more of the fruits with it. Children, meaning ages, 4 or 5 to older, can use it safely with a butter knife or a spoon and prepare it and have a fun activity with their parents, especially over the summer. It's a good thing that way. Now,
well, and
go ahead.
I'm glad you brought up the idea of growing them yourself, because that actually kind of plays into the idea that that's really important when you consider using edible flowers, and that's that you really do need to know your source with these flowers and where they're coming from. Most of these flowers, when they're grown, they are not they're grown for ornamental purpose, not for edible purposes. So if you were to buy them, say, from a garden center or from a nursery, they likely have been sprayed with pesticides that aren't necessarily labeled for edible food use, or at least haven't been tested for that. And so it's really important that if you do use edible flowers, do use flowers in your food, that it's something that you've either grown yourself and know exactly what's happened to that plant, or it's something that you buy from somebody who grew it with the intention of it being edible.
Right, and that's so important, because you can get,
yes.
They used to use a lot of pesticides that were known stomach poisons, and turn around and eat these flowers that were sprayed with them, you would not feel so well. And it's very important that you do, because, and this is also important because of it's not even the nutritional value of these edible plants, but they're high in enzymes because they're growing. They have natural dyes in them, pigmentations. So that means that they have higher concentration of compounds, chemicals that are beneficial, one, to the plant, but also hopefully beneficial to you. And in doing this, these types of plants are very pungent, they can be extremely sweet or bitter, or taste like a cucumber or radish, or whatever the I'm going to say the olfactory or the senses taste with them, but they're very potent. So it's where you would think, okay, I need a cup of broccoli spears, versus you might only need 1 or 2 flowers.
Mm-hmm.
To get the same benefit. And so it's very important that you look at this. And I know Iowa State University, on their horticulture and home pest news section on their website, has 10 rules of edible flowers, which brings out, it was done by Sherry Rindles, a colleague of yours, and it brings out the rules of what you do for edible flowers. Also, like you mentioned, the impatiens, which are beautiful, and also there's like wild daisies, etc., that you could see on the side of a road. But please know this, audience, many roads, especially in the United States, they are sprayed for weed control, so you could have pesticides on them.
Yeah, absolutely. I never eat flowers from the side of the road. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like go to a pristine forest, or maybe they'll have in the future edible flower gardens that you go and pick and you share in that, or a community garden that way. But now at the Reiman Gardens, where the edible flowers are, because I've seen outside of the virtual like little tour that is on the internet.
Hmm.
Do you have them corrugate in areas like the violets, which are Johnny Jump Ups or violas with the roses? Are they like separate gardens? Have you noticed? In other words, what I'd ask you is, do you grow them in separate like categories of the succulents versus non-succulents versus any of those other hardwood type
Right.
roses are woody versus soft leafed?
Sure. No, we don't have, say, like an edible flower garden. For the most part, we do have some gardens that are specialized, like a rose garden that's primarily roses, or an herb garden that's primarily herbs. But most of our plants are planted just in really wonderful kind of garden designs or garden spaces without being dictated by a specific plant group. So we don't have all the pansies in one spot. We have the pansies throughout the gardens where they can brighten up little corners of all the different areas in the gardens. And same is true for things like daylilies. A lot of some gardens, public gardens, would have all the daylilies in one area, which is really wonderful because it allows you to compare and contrast and see all the different varieties that are there kind of right before you, right in front of you. We have a much more, here at Reiman Gardens, have a much more display focus. So we spend more time, we may have just as many daylilies, but instead of them all being kind of right in one area, they're spread out all throughout the garden, adding their color, adding their wonderful attributes to different areas of the garden. And so the collection, I guess it's kind of like, instead of putting your entire art collection in one room of your house, you have it in, one piece of it in each room, and that's kind of the same idea that we have here.
Right, you spread it out. It's more of the garden is your palette, and you're just spreading it out as you're painting in this acreage, which can be very beautiful. And comparing Reiman Gardens with other gardens throughout the United States or even the world, is it more in the style of the old world, old European style where there's a maze to it, or is it just you walk through like Bellingrath Gardens in Alabama, which are absolutely magnificent too? Would you stroll through?
Yeah, it's definitely something you would. It's definitely something you would stroll through. I would say the biggest inspiration for our landscape is the prairie, which kind of makes sense being in the middle of Iowa. But we do have some formal elements, but always tying back to this kind of Iowa aesthetic, the tall grass prairies, when you get to the eastern and northeastern part of the state, you have much more hills and bluffs and those kinds of things. It's just the idea that it certainly wouldn't look like Versailles by any means.
Right.
But the plant palette and the way that it's put together is probably the biggest inspiration. Is the kind of the broad sweeps and colors of the prairie.
And with a garden where you have tours going on, and not only the educational purposes for the students at Iowa State and local universities, do you have, I'm going to call it predators in there, meaning like snakes or rats come in or anything? Because sometimes in gardens you have natural animals that are there. It might even be a turtle, or did you ever have a history of having a frog there that was an endangered species? So it does. What type of I'm going to call it pests?
Kind of wildlife do we have?
Yeah, wildlife. Wildlife is the correct category.
Well, I think for us, most gardeners, at least in the Northeast and the Midwest, their biggest challenge are deer and rabbits. And for us, being in the middle of the city and being completely fenced in, we don't have a lot of deer problems, but we have an enormous population of rabbits.
Really?
And they add a lot of challenge to gardening here. But we also have what we've seen in the last couple of years has been this really interesting dynamic that's starting to pop up where we do have quite a few rabbits in the garden, and in particular during the winter time when there's snow on the ground and those rabbits are looking for things to eat, they cause a lot of damage to our woody plants by chewing the bark off the outside of it.
Right.
And what we've
healthy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's detrimental to the plant. There was one winter where we lost many trees and shrubs because of rabbit damage. But what's been really interesting that we have noticed is that we now have about 2 or 3 hawks that patrol our garden, red-tailed hawks. We have a fox that lives in the garden now, and these animals are starting to help us kind of control this probably too large rabbit population that we have in the garden. So that's been a recent development that, as a gardener, we've been really happy to see.
Yeah, and see, this is interesting because usually when you have these situations, especially as you stated that it's fenced in, Aaron, it's amazing how nature provides when areas are like overpopulated. Like with the, what are the odds of a red-tailed hawk showing up or a fox? That's what I'm saying. They do come about. It's amazing how the earth feels those little pitter-patters and know that there must be too much in a certain area. Now, are these particular rabbits, are they like long-eared hares, or are they a particular color or anything? I'm just curious.
Oh, no, they're
just your typical.
Yeah, no, it's just kind of the little brown rabbit.
Yeah, little brown rabbit. Yeah, little brown rabbit and they burrow like anything. They probably have a whole tunnel maze like a New York subway system or the Los Angeles subway system out here.
Well,
it's probably all over the place under there.
We always joke that these rabbits come from the population on campus, and the joke is that campus rabbits are very tame. They're not afraid of people because there are so many people on campus, and there are very few predators because there are so many people on campus. And, of course, college students leave rabbits alone. And so our population is a much more bold population, I would say, than the average rabbit. Many times you can just about walk up and grab one of them. They're so tame.
My.
Yeah.
And they like wood, they like everything, so that's good. Now, with the butterfly garden that you have in the United States, with your facilities, how many types of I'm going to call it university or these public gardens that they are have the butterfly gardens too? Yeah.
Well, our butterfly wing is a fairly unique facility for a university. Most definitely. There are certainly gardens and museums all over the country that have facilities like ours, but we are one of just less than a handful probably that are at a university, which makes it a really wonderful. Yeah, it makes it a really wonderful thing, and we were fortunate enough that we have an amazing facility, and so it's really become a really nice model for other folks who are thinking about building attractions like that. And we have a very high success rate in terms of the lifespan of our butterflies and the emergence rate, how many of them actually emerge out of their chrysalis. And it's because we have some really wonderful facilities that are kind of stem from the idea that we're at a research university.
Right. And with the types of plants that you've discussed on the show, those types of plants have a vibration, and these types of animal or insects, meaning the butterflies, they vibrate to it, especially the more tropical ones. So I think there's a symbiotic balance there that's happening in your facilities, which even makes it a little bit more unique than other facilities. With the butterflies and the pollination of the plants that occur, I know we've lost a lot of bees, and there was concern about the bees, were for pollination of flowers and vegetables, et cetera, this way. But is your pollination primarily in in your gardens from natural bees and insects, or is it from these butterflies, or is this totally weaned off, the butterflies? Only the plants that are in there.
Yeah, it's only the plants that are in there. The butterfly wing, because it has exotic species in it, is completely contained. And we actually have to go through great lengths to make sure that those little insects stay in there at all times.
Right.
Outside, outside in the gardens we have, lots of native butterflies and native pollinators, like some of the bees and some of the other things that do pollinate a lot of the things. And in fact, it's interesting that you bring that up, because this year our home production garden, which is basically our vegetable garden here at the whole theme of that is talking about pollination and how important pollination, that role plays in our food source, and how important insects like bees and butterflies and flies and beetles and all sorts of things, how important they are in helping us get the food that we eat. Things like zucchini and squash and peppers and eggplant and a lot of the tropical fruits that we eat are all very reliant on insect pollinators to produce that fruit.
And do y'all grow okra there? In that vegetable garden?
It's we're a little too far north to fully appreciate okra.
It's a sturdy African plant that came over to the United States. Has a lot of history with the United States, because when Thomas Jefferson was, before he was our president, that was the number one outside of cotton was okra crops. It was a cash commodity. So, and I know their flowers, just like the squash flowers, are so beautiful because they have the yellow and the dark purple inside that makes it so pretty. And like in Italy, I had a friend, Maura, she, when she was alive, she was older and she passed away, she did a beautiful taking anchovy, sticking it into the squash flour, coating it in a batter with beer, and then frying it, and they were the most tasty appetizer that you ever had, but it was just, and that's a native dish in Bassano Romano, Italy. So it was very nice and very special at that time. But it was neat, because in the markets over in Italy, especially in this town, they had edible, the squash flowers. Over here, you don't have it until you have, like we're going to learn in the second half of this show, certain markets that can supply it, or you grow your own. So I think it's very important, and it's always been important to have just enough little pots to grow it within your facilities. Now, with I'm curious of this question. I honestly don't know the answer. I don't even know if you would know the answer, but you have more experience in it. With having the exotic butterflies, especially this blue morpho butterfly, have you noticed that there is more native butterflies in your facilities?
Well, I
was just curious.
No, it's an interesting question. The butterfly wing, because it is completely segregated, actually doesn't really interact with our outdoor gardens at all. And so there really isn't a relationship there at all. But one of the things that's interesting is that because we have this butterfly wing, and we have the people on staff who have a great interest in the butterflies, we have an entomologist on staff who manages that facility, and because it's here and our visitors appreciate it, the people who work here appreciate it, we just naturally gravitate towards having more plants that native butterflies enjoy. And we do have programs here where we go out and monitor native butterfly populations to see how they're doing, not only on the 14-acre grounds of our garden, but in other areas throughout the state. And I think that we do have more butterflies in the garden, partly because we just have more flowers than the average plot of 14 acres of land, but also because, all of us have this interest in it, and it just kind of naturally pops up because of that.
Right, and because it's true, like you said, it's the colors. We're all attracted to the color. It's like just gravitating, and the more exotic, even when you see pressed butterfly wings or pressed flowers, the colors draw you to that attention. It's like the art of many women and even some men. They did embroidery, and the finer embroiderists. They did beautiful things of flowers and tapestries and that, and we were always drawn as a human by the colors and that, as I call it, that vibration. It heals you. It's like when you want to wear orange, you end up having orange flowers in your house too. It's just a little trait there, and amazing. And
I think that's what makes the flowers on your plate so inviting and kind of amazing when you see that, when you serve a meal that has edible flowers as part of it. That's one of the main reasons why it feels so special.
Mm-hmm. And when you had this experience at the Longwood garden, what was the flowers that were on your plate?
Oh, we had we had squash blossoms, and I think there was some nasturtium and signet marigolds. There were I don't even remember all of them. Lots of different things. Things like lilac isn't blooming right now, but little flowers kind of like that floating in your drinks or things like that.
Right. That's a good point. Meaning you don't need to do a lot. It's just like the little flowers floating in your drink, putting the things. It's even like I have a simple dish for kids where you take large basil leaves, which if you have the flowers, they look great as a mast in this because you can fill it with the soft cheese and put like raspberries, or I call it like 3 blueberries in it, and if you have the mass, meaning the flowers, you can put that in. It looks just like a boat, but it tastes real good. But it's just giving you that little pizzazz to make you feel special, at the same time bringing out the beauty of not only the flower but the beauty within you, because it makes you feel special. And in a way, it's like a communion between the plant and you, and the plant world. It's a very it's a nice experience. It's a very nice experience. And many of these flowers that I know were at your garden, and the history of these flowers, like with cornflowers, the pansies. Any of these different colors, meaning like the purples, the blues, the oranges, or like even hibiscus, or any of those were used years ago as what we call dye plants. And it was a natural dye for many of our, even the hennas, and many of our textiles. Mm-hmm. Before the invent of taking those formulations and making it into, a synthetic organic compound. So I think it's interesting not only that we discuss edible flowers, but with your gardens, the Reiman Gardens, there's so many different plants and trees and activity there, I'm going to call it, on that 14-acre estate, that it has many other uses in the history of beyond just landscaping. I mean, botanical, botany. I could see zoology majors going there. Endemic species, a lot of stuff. Do you grow also, because in your area of Iowa, I'm not familiar, do you have like brambleberries or like blackberries or like a berrying bush or something?
Yeah, raspberries and those kinds of things do very well in gardens here.
Mhm. In your gardens, like if you had the raspberries, would that be the traditional red raspberry? Because here in California, they had in the grocery store like a yellowy orange raspberry, which I was not familiar. I didn't know if it was genetically engineered or what, but I just go, it wasn't red,
Yep. I know they have some of those.
Or the exotic ones, engineered ones, or more of the native plants, I'm going to call it.
Yeah, well, and I think like the lighter ones that you're talking about there, are kind of either cultivars of raspberries that somebody bred or found in their own garden and kind of propagated from there, I suppose. But for us, that common red raspberry is something, I mean, not native to this part of the world, but something that does very well here, and of course tastes very good, especially when you grow it on your own, in your own garden.
That's true, because I grew up in Florida, and I remember my great-grandfather was among the first to bring blackberries from Pennsylvania into Florida. So it is, and then what is it? The University of Arkansas developed a non-thorned blackberry.
Oh, yeah.
So it's very popular in those areas, and I think it's interesting how through migration, whether you're a butterfly migrating and pollinating areas or a bumblebee, but through even the migration of human life into different civilizations, there's always been plants. I mean, it's like if certain activities in our civilization, we wouldn't have okra in the United States. We wouldn't have certain corn if we weren't with the natives. I mean, it's all different types of histories of migration when you look at it in a bigger picture.
Yep.
And that especially, like even, do you have like any of the Christmas flowers? Even though we're in the summer, I know you had a beautiful on your site article on the Christmas cactus and the poinsettias. Because do they have those in the garden?
You can't have a display during the holidays without a poinsettia in it. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, and many people don't realize that we see it so many times at Christmas time that we don't realize that it was a native plant, correct me if I'm wrong, of Mexico, and how it migrated through continental drift and everything else, and the pollination and bringing cuttings over. And also on your site, there is a reference to poisonous plants, which I think is important, with the topic of edible plants. And rule of thumb, audience, it's not cast in stone, but usually with a plant that has a white milky sap coming from it when you pick it or anything, it's usually poisonous because it's a latex material in it. But like the oleanders or any of those you can't even burn or anything. And I always find it very interesting that oleanders are the number one plant that is put around baseball fields or any of these other fields or common, I'm going to say roadways, but like in the South because of the humidity.
In the South.
When they grow, the air, the humidity makes them give off a gas, and it's a 6% increase in cancer if you've got that plant around that area, And it's amazing how it's always in public areas where you can get exposed. But that's another topic of the show, but, meaning future shows, rather. But,
I think that brings up a good point, though, just the idea that, when you do kind of venture out and start looking at using edible flowers, it is important to know your flower, to know what it is so that you do know that it's not something that is toxic or poisonous. And I think, too, some of these edible flowers that we've been talking about are fine in small amounts but can really make you sick in large amounts. And a really good example of that is the daylily. Daylily is perfectly edible, but you don't want to eat too much of it, or it will make you not feel so great.
Right. It's like don't overindulge. So many people think more is better. It's the special right of edible flowers, and at the same time, it's like 1 to 3 might be fine, but not of the daylily, but meaning of a nasturtium. But you don't want to eat 6 or 8 of them because they're highly alkaline, and then it messes up your acids within your stomach, and you can get nauseated, etc. Now, in some of the plants, I do not know if y'all have comfrey, dandelion, or like maybe in the garden the parsleys or anything, or even elderberries. These types of plants, not only do they have a fruit or a vegetable or a berry, which is a commodity, but the flowers are very small or very potent in like in peppers. They still have the aroma on the flowers of the pepper that you can put it in water and make like a pepper water versus just eating a green pepper.
Mhm.
Like you mentioned with the the lilacs, where you had beautiful, on the top of your drinks and the
Right.
lilacs, but you can have rose hips, even sunflowers, because they have a large petal. These can be used in dips and eaten, just like dipping it in and eating it.
Yep. Absolutely. And some of them make wonderful teas, too. Of course, the best example of that is chamomile.
Yes. Yes, and that became a whole industry over here of bringing it in and doing it, because it was always used for upset stomach and other modalities that way, and helping with the immune system and that. And also with mixing that with peppermint, a spearmint, like sleepy time, you would go to sleep. Makes you more less stressful. And chamomile has a beautiful flower, and in many of these flowers too, you can traditionally hang them upside down or use a dryer. By a dryer, I mean like a dryer's oven, like you
Right.
dry fruit, so that you can save those flowers or those berries or those pine nuts or any of those type of edible food, that then you can save it in the cold months that when you don't have access to these plants. So
Absolutely.
it's very beneficial. And even like many people, we know dill is the closest some people get to it is eating a dill pickle and the flavoring in it, versus using dill in spicing and making tartar sauces or different lemon sauces with dill for fish or for any of those type things. But the flowers are just as aromatic and even sometimes more flavorful than the actual seed or the plant, which you would call the herb,
Right.
is. And
right.
And in this,
and I know that I think back, we call what my grandma always referred to as refrigerator pickles, often used a dill flower in it to help give that flavor to it. Yeah.
Yes, because it would give that little zing, a little extra.
Yep.
It would be good. I know I had a cousin Louise, and she was older. She was like an aunt, and God, she made the best refrigerator pickles that way. I know what you mean. And all of these, when you share these types of recipes and these types of experience with your loved ones or your family and friends, it brings back a happy moment in your time with that person. So I know, as you said, with your grandmother and having the flour in those refrigerator pickles, it brings a smile to your face, Aaron, I know.
Yep, absolutely.
Because it's many special times that helps us through harder times in our life when we can think of those. I honestly don't know. I think there's close to maybe, I know it's definitely over 25, but do you think there's more than that in edible species, or 50 of plants?
Oh, sure. And one of the things that there, and of course, just a little bit of research online can get you lists and lists of some of these things, and there are certainly some that are much more popular than others. But the easiest list to come up with in your head is just about any herb that you use. The flower is also edible. So you look at chives or oregano or thyme or basil or any of those things. The flower also has a similar flavor, but can be used and eaten. So
yeah. Eaten and also decoration. because
Yes,
you can
yes.
even make jellies or candies and put the flowers on. Even when you bake a cake or anything, you can put fresh of these edible flowers on, and it makes it look so pretty, especially here, you know, when it's hot in the summer, you just want to have like a pound cake or anything. You can decorate with the cakes. You don't have to use any icings or anything, and it looks so pretty. Or even having a mousse and having, you know, like a chocolate mousse and then putting like a blossom of a lemon on it or anything. It just makes it so pretty and aromatic and very tasteful, because that dish is made for that special person there. And as you stated, Aaron, there are many websites out there that you just plug in edible flowers. And also do look at the Reiman Gardens section of the Iowa State University website, and it's you can find it by just plugging in that name. And if you have any other websites you want to give the audience to look at, because they might be one of the lucky winners to win the new botulinum nasturtium gel that was formulated out of edible flowers by famous Dr. Hildy here, and that they can name 5 edible flowers that are grown or stated, you know, at the Reiman Gardens. The first one to call in at our office wins. You know. So,
yeah. Well, and our website is certainly a great place to get some of that information. And the other wonderful place is the Iowa State Extension website, and the Yard and Garden section of that website has lots and lots of information about edible flowers and about gardening in general. And that's just yardandgarden.extension.iastate.edu. But certainly ReimanGardens.com is another great place to get some of that information too.
Yeah, and I know that the busiest portion with the gardens that you've seen, is it in the summertime or the fall or
yes,
the winter?
Yes, it's for us. It's typically the June, July, and August. Our roses are in full bloom in June here in Iowa, and the weather is the most favorable for growing and visiting gardens that time of year. But we are open year-round because we have indoor facilities as well, and we grow plants here that, of course, in other parts of the world just grow outside, and for us, we take great care to keep them alive in conservatories. But that gives us a little respite in January and February when we are seeing nothing but snow and cold temperatures.
Right. Now, because it is a garden, and I understand the endowment, et cetera, this way in our audience would, do you do weddings there too? Because sometimes in gardens they have weddings or special events, or is it just touring? Oh, okay, so we get to, we do a little bit of everything there.
Yeah, we do. We have, folks can rent our facility to have their wedding or reception or retirement party or anything like that, absolutely. And it allows us to kind of share our facility with the public and hopefully get people to see what we do here, to see the beautiful things that we do, to learn the interesting things that we try to teach folks about plants and insects here. It's kind of the more people that come here, the more that we can share this information with folks, and the more we can kind of reach our mission to educate and enchant people.
Right, and gardens, because not many people have the luxury of gardens anymore, and they might live in an apartment or a condo or in the city and don't get to see it. Especially if you have children or young adults, it's good to take the family to these gardens because it's like the museum of plants. You get to see it in the natural flora. You get to experience the soils, and I bet because of the way the gardens are kept there, I bet you have a lot of earthworms per shovel, as they say, for good aeration of the soils. And, earlier in the show you mentioned that you have I'm going to call it the edible garden, meaning where you grow your vegetables and stuff. Do you use it on campus for food, or do you
actually
just grow
most of the produce that comes out of the home production garden, actually there's a program in Ames here that collects excess produce. When you plant zucchini, you always have way more zucchini than you actually can use before it goes bad. So there's a program here. It's called Plant a Row for the Hungry, and they collect excess produce and give it to food banks. And our produce goes to that organization and gets distributed to food banks across the community.
Oh, excellent, because it supports the community and assists that way. And I know
they also spend a lot of time educating folks as well about how to use that produce, because you could give a person a zucchini, but that doesn't mean they know what to do with it.
yeah, they don't know to put the onions and tomatoes and garlic and make it like a okra stew, or they don't know how to stuff it, or maybe fry it up, whatever it is. But it is, the more you care about it in preparing food in that, it does send that love and that vibration through it so that you become more nourished and happy about it. And I know we're coming up on the hour, and I want to thank you very, very much, Aaron Stiles, for being my special guest on this hour of the show on feasting on edible flowers and introducing our audience to the Reiman Gardens, because I feel it's a very center point being in Iowa and its contribution not only to the university but to the world. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on, and if anybody is ever in Central Iowa, they're welcome to join us, but I also encourage anybody to visit your local public garden, because they're wonderful resources and wonderful places.
Thank you, Aaron, very much.
Thanks.
Informed, enlightened, alive and amplified. This is the Living Light Network.
Can be anywhere.
That's true. So we get these shipments in once a week, and they come to us as chrysalids, or if you're a moth, it would be equivalent to a cocoon. And they emerge out of those chrysalids in what we call our butterfly lab, and we take them over to the butterfly wing, where they fly around, and visitors can enjoy kind of interacting very closely with some of these butterflies, which is, of course, a lot of fun.
Right, and I know you have like 800 species in there approximately, but you also have, which you've shared with us when we were interviewing for the promo, in reference to the blue morpho. That apparently is a very rare butterfly with iridescent blue wings, but where is that native of in the United States?
It's actually native to Central America, parts of southern Mexico, down into Costa Rica. It's a rainforest species, I believe, and it is rare, especially for us here in Iowa. If you were down there, you probably would see it about as often as you would see a monarch or a swallowtail somewhere else in this country. But for us it is, and it's just such a showy butterfly with iridescent blue wings. It's a real showstopper, and it's something that it's just one of, we have, because all of these butterflies are exotic, we do have to work with the USDA and have permits to display and raise some of these butterflies. And we have permits to display well over 1,000 different kinds of butterflies here, although we don't have that many at once. We usually have about 50 different kinds, and we kind of change it up throughout the year to always introduce something new. But the blue morpho is one that we will have most of the time, because it's something that folks really enjoy seeing when they come in, and something that's very unusual, especially in the middle of Iowa.
Right, because in our audience, Iowa gets snow, and that's why even with the Reiman Gardens, when you're doing the horticulture studies or the landscape management to get your degree, some of the students, it might start out like with 15 in a class or a group, and then end with only 5 at the end because of the cold and also the curriculum, meaning what they need to do in their curriculum. So
sure.
It's always evolving, as I called it when I used to teach years ago. It's just ever going. The Reiman Gardens, many of our audience, because they're located in different parts of the world, literally, let alone the United States and Canada, could you give a little history of how the gardens became the gardens? Because
Oh,
that's a
sure.
little interesting story before we get heavy into the edible flowers.
Yeah. Well, Iowa State University has always had kind of a display garden that they used as a outdoor classroom and a place to evaluate and test plants and different kinds of flowers here at the university. And in the mid-'90s, we were able to kind of expand that and move it to a new location that was much more prominent in the community, and that's kind of the beginning of Reiman Gardens. It's called Reiman Gardens because of the main benefactor, which is Roy and Bobby Reiman. Roy was a magazine publisher, and he's since kind of retired. Culture, the Department of Landscape Architecture, and other departments on campus do use us to help teach their students their various skills that they need to learn as students at the university. But we're also a wonderful kind of tourist attraction and display garden with 30 different gardens that folks can come and see. And one of our most popular exhibits here, apart from the rose gardens and our lake, is our butterfly flight house, so we call it the butterfly wing. And inside of it we have hundreds of both native and tropical butterflies flying around. It's really kind of a fun and inspiring place to be.
Right, and with the butterfly garden, because butterflies have a short lifetime, how do you supply the butterflies in that area? Especially the exotic ones.
Do. Yeah, they do. Well, and of course the butterfly itself, the average lifespan for the butterflies that we have is about 2 weeks. Of course, that's only one part of their life. Butterflies start out as caterpillars and can live how long as as a caterpillar and then chrysalids and then become a butterfly. But for us, the way that we keep all those butterflies flying around in there is that about once a week, sometimes twice a week when it's really busy, we will have shipments come in from various parts of the world, sometimes Central America, sometimes Southeast Asia. We work with a broker to help us get stuff from places like Southern Africa and Australia, all sorts of places. Oddly enough, the broker's in Denver, which seems kind of an odd place to be, but we get a shipment in every week.
One time, so hello and welcome to One Cell, One Light Radio with Dr. Hildegarde Staninger, commonly known as Dr. Hildy. I have a very special show for you audience today, which is Feast Your Eyes on Edible Flowers. We're going to go from the gardens that are connected throughout all our United States and possibly of the world. And I have a very special guest who is Aaron Steil. He is Education Coordinator and Visitor Services Coordinator at the Reiman Gardens, Iowa State University. And he will be on our first hour. In the second hour, we'll go to market to eat edible flowers. Aaron, I'm very honored that you're here and have taken the time from your busy schedule at the university. And I know especially with the summer, the gardens are very popping with tourists and people looking at all the beautiful flowers and the many new things that you have, even the butterfly garden there, sanctuary.
Yeah, well, it is busy here, but I'm happy to be talking with you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, wonderful. Can you give a little bit of background in reference to the Reiman Gardens and Iowa State University and what you do there, as compared to the rest of the United States?
Sure. Well, Reiman Gardens is a botanical garden, arboretum, public garden, kind of more broadly speaking, associated with Iowa State University. We kind of have two major functions, and one of those is to serve as a kind of a learning laboratory for the university, the Department of Horticulture, in quotes, I suppose. He still keeps very busy. But he was the person who gave us the initial funding and continues to support us today to help build the facility that we have here today, 14 acres with a conservatory and a butterfly flight house and rose gardens and water gardens and all sorts of just wonderful kind of features that inspire those who visit us to garden in their own homes.
Right, and in this show, which is on feasting your eyes on edible flowers, really, what is the use of edible flowers? When I was preparing for the show, meaning before getting introduced to you, Aaron, I didn't realize, but Iowa State University, through the Reiman Gardens, is among the leader in bringing out the knowledge of edible flowers, let alone private interest or private companies. And
Sure.
that was very nice, warm and cozy feeling for me, knowing that a state university was involved in bringing out this knowledge, because it's so important.
We work with Iowa State University Extension. Iowa State University is a land-grant college, which means that part of their mission is to kind of distribute information to Iowans and people around the country about research and to share that knowledge with the general public, and we are one way in which that message is kind of set across. And most public gardens, whether it's the Reiman Gardens here in Iowa or it's Descanso Gardens or Lotus Land in California,